All right, welcome to episode 18 of the Just a Moment Ago podcast. Today, Sam is back with me.
Hey!
Yeah, how are you doing since your last appearance?
Good. How about you?
I'm actually doing pretty good. Things are good.
Good deal.
So today we're going to be discussing full-time parenting after addiction. I mean, I know you've found yourself in an interesting situation in the past, and now you have the opportunity to have your kids back. And a lot of times if you are in active addiction, you've probably neglected your kids at some point and you have to rebuild trust in a nurturing environment.
Yes.
So I would let's go back to just before you had kids. You were using a substance at that point, right?
Whatever was in front of me, pretty much. Yeah.
Would you say you had an addiction prior to kids, or did that happen after you had kids? Or
I don't
your
think
first
it
kid?
was addiction before I had Xavier. Because when I would smoke weed, I would take maybe a hit or two and be done for the rest of the day and probably not smoke again for another week or so.
Right.
I drank quite a bit when I was a teenager, but I feel like that's normal in Wisconsin for teenagers to drink. Then by the time I turned 21, I was over it. So I don't think it was actually addiction until after Emma, probably.
Really?
Yeah.
So, do you remember what your approach to parenting was like during that time?
When I was using?
Well, you were using, but you weren't in active addiction.
Right. Well, basically like you would consider a normal, single mom. I just have a drink here or there, or, smoke weed here or there. Actually, every day I'd smoke weed, but you become functioning weed smoker after a little while. So,
right.
I was able to parent normally, like I would be if I was, sober, like I am again now. It wouldn't be much of a difference, I guess, from now and then. But like my parenting, it's about the same now.
So, when you started though back then, when you had the kids and were using previous to active addiction, was there ever moments where you were, thinking like, this is going to lead me down the wrong path, I'm going to, might lose my kids, anything like that?
Towards the end, when I was in active addiction, I did, but I never imagined anything like this ever happening, ever, up until literally probably a month before.
How old was Xavier when you had Emma again?
6.
So, and you were just using recreationally through all that time, and then it wasn't until you were with Emma that it actually turned more into an addiction?
Yeah, so obviously my dad had Xavier up until he was 6. I got him back right after I had Emma. When Emma came home from the hospital, I got him back. So
right.
I didn't really have, I only parented really once a week then. I had Xavier on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would say the little bit of parenting I did do, I had the same approach as I have now. Patience is a big thing that I didn't have when I was using, that I have now and had prior to using. Even those 5 years that I didn't have Xavier full time, I never thought that I wasn't going to have him back. I knew that I would eventually get stable, and, I would beat myself up a lot because it was taking a long time for me to get myself on my feet. But I don't really think it was addiction. I think it was just more of a social, it was a lot of drinking, pills and stuff here and there, but nothing, like I was never seeking, I was never chasing my high, maybe the alcohol buzz, but not, the pill highs. I wasn't stealing to get things, well, I guess I would steal pills if I seen, if they were out in front of me. But I wouldn't steal things from people to sell to go get it.
Right, that's
Drugs.
right. You're saying you weren't actually out like stealing somebody's laptop to sell it or going to the store to steal whatever from there to sell. But you would take a drug if it was in your where you
If
could
they
take
had
it.
it in a medicine cabinet and I was in the bathroom, yep.
Did anybody ever notice that you took
I mean-
a few here and there, or did you
I mean,
always
probably, but I'd never been confronted on it.
Right, nobody ever confronted you.
When my grandma passed away, they had her on steroids and Ritalin. The steroids made her awake enough.
Right.
They also made her crabby, which I think the Ritalin did too. But so she wasn't even taking the Ritalin at the end. So then after she passed, somebody had said that the Ritalin was gone. I still to this day think that they know that it was me, but
right. Nobody said anything at all.
nobody said anything at that point.
Nobody's ever even like dropped a hint or anything. That's crazy.
No, but I'm sure they all know. They don't really need me to admit it.
Does that like so? In my past, when I've done some things like that too. I believe everybody who's been in addiction has those dark things in their past. It creates a lot of like guilty feelings. Did you have that too, where you you're like, why do I have to do this?
Yep.
Like, why can't I just walk away? Because you do that and you take it, and then it's over in a couple hours, and then for the next day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days,
Weeks,
you're just
months,
right. It's
depending
just
on what it was and who it's from and whatever.
For sure. It's just like, why do I do this to myself? And then it's every time you see them, you got that feeling. Are they gonna say it? Are they gonna say it? Or if they happen to message you out of the blue, you're just like, no, they found out.
I hope this isn't what it's about.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not. It never is.
Right.
But the fact that you have to go through so much guilt and it just weighs on you so heavy.
Sometimes it takes a long time. A long time. Like, it took me years to admit to my grandma, who is still alive, things that I had done when I was living with her.
Right.
Like, I told her that the reason why her car tire was flat was because a semi had dropped a big rock, and I hit it like a dump truck dropped a big rock and I hit it. No, honestly, I took a hit of dust off and passed out. And
whoa, that's a big difference.
Yeah, that is a big difference.
You did it while you were driving?
Yes.
Oh man.
That's when I was with Emma's dad, and he was hitting it as soon as we got in the car, and I was like, if you're gonna do it, so am I. Ripped it out of his hand, took a big old hit, and started going to the left, and he came to and realized we were going to the left, grabbed the wheel, and I have not touched dust off since that day. And I never will again.
It just makes you pass out as soon as you hit it.
It makes you feel, dizzy. It depends on, like, how big of a hit and everything you take. You get dizzy, your ears go, whoa, 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 and your head feels like it's doing, like, this, pulsating. Basically the same as doing, like, whippets with the whipped cream container.
Right.
With the CO2 things. Although dust off is it's the same, but dust offs is way worse.
Sounds scary.
Baby daddy had like faded out in the passenger seat of the van once and started foaming from the mouth. And his sister and his buddy were in the back seat, and they're both trying to wake him up. And when he came to, his sister had slapped him in the cheek because she was trying to wake him up, and he turned around and grabbed her by the front of her shirt and started beating her because he thought somebody was attacking him. He didn't even realize it was his sister.
He was that out of it from it.
And that the day that we wrecked my grandma's tire, both of us, when we got home, both of us laid there and puked the entire day. The whole rest of the day, that's what we did, was puke.
So it just destroys your stomach, or it makes you crazy
nauseous?
or
I can't even imagine what it does to your stomach or
Is
your
it-
lungs.
Is it from like the taste or what
I
is it?
think
Do you
it
know
just
why
like the
you
chemical
throw up
reaction,
so much?
the chemicals in your body.
You poison
and
yourself
Yeah.
basically, and your body's trying to get it
Yeah, I mean,
out.
what is in that stuff? Who knows? I don't know.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure if you looked it up, it's probably not something you should be inhaling.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's like I was always told that meth had rat poison in it. I still did that, so it
A
didn't scare
lot of
me.
things have additives and different stuff, but people are still doing them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not stopping anyone.
Right,
Well, some people, but a lot of people are still doing it.
right.
But that's crazy. I've never had any experience with any of the like inhalants like that. But
Yeah.
I've heard some really stuff like that where it's almost too much.
I haven't even had a whippet since then. Like
It's good though, just don't.
it's a fun feeling, but it literally lasts like 30 seconds,
And it's highly dangerous.
and it's obviously highly dangerous, and it's an expensive, stupid habit.
It's expensive.
Yeah, I mean they're like,
You go through them quick.
yeah, they're. I mean, if you actually buy whippets, you get like a box of like 12 or something like that, and it's like $20. Then you have to have a canister to do it with.
Right.
If you buy the dust off, it's like $4 or $5 a bottle. And if it's, you and somebody else doing it, you're going to need at least 2 or 3 bottles to stay high for a few hours, So,
So it could easily, well, I mean, it could easily be 30, 40, $50 a day if you're really, really doing it heavy.
yeah, easily. Because, yeah, once you start doing it, it's just like any other drug. You gain a tolerance to it, so then you have to do more. And
That sounds really scary.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So at what point would you say that you were in active addiction then? After Emma? Because it's
I had
after Emma, but before Journey.
Yep. So, about a year after Emma was born, I'd say. I had tried meth before I got pregnant with Emma, and I had done it a couple of times with one of my friends. Just like the weekend, I'd go. I was bartending at that time, so it helped me stay up.
For
so
sure.
I would go over to my girlfriend's house, and hang out with her one night and stay up, and then stay up the whole weekend for work. At that time, it was the same way. Like, I could pick it up and put it down easily.
Right.
Not when I got pregnant with Emma, I hadn't done it for probably like 3 or 4 months, and had no desire to do it again. After I had Emma, I've been undiagnosed with ADHD for most of my life, up until I was 31 years old.
Right.
So then I started to self-medicate with Adderall. And one of the girls that I was getting my Adderall from got her Adderall taken away for doing meth. Well, so then I was microdosing meth when I first started dating Journey's dad. And I mean like microdosing, like maybe a point of meth, put it in a tissue and swallow it. And I'd be, good for the day. I'd go home and sleep. Like, it was...
A point is 1/10 of a gram, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But then I could start feeling my tolerance, build up, and I would need more, and then I'd need more. Well, then we started hanging out with other people that were doing it,
Yeah.
and, locking ourselves in the bedroom for hours and smoking it. And, then once you start to smoke it, then you do hot rails, and then you think those are the coolest thing in the world. So then you do them like over and over and over and over.
And it's just...
And it's consistent downward spiral.
Were you ever using heavily while you were working at bartending?
Not heavily.
So
Just-
did you ever have any of the paranoia that people get while you were working?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh,
How did that go?
That was scary. Especially because the bar that I worked at, the people that came there were like people who were big parts of that community.
Right.
So I was always so scared that like I would be in the bathroom doing a line or something, and somebody would walk in, or
For sure.
something would fall out of my pocket. There was times where I'd put something somewhere and then think that I dropped it somewhere in the bar. Yes, and and that probably had a lot to do with why I could just pick it up and put it down, and I could go to work and bartend just fine without it because I knew what it did to me,
Right.
you know. And usually, like, the first night I'd be okay, but once I got to night number 2, I'd still be able to work just fine.
Right.
I'd just be like scared shitless. I'd have this fake smile on my face permanently, like.
Do you think people noticed, or do you think you were pretty good at acting through it?
I think that they probably thought something was up, but I don't think that. I wasn't using the amount that I was towards the end. There, people definitely were noticing. But no, at that point, I don't even think my baby daddy was new, you know? And I was still on and off with him at that point. So
now you're in active addiction with Emma, and Xavier is staying with your dad most of the time at this point, or no?
After I gave birth to Emma and she came home from the NICU, Xavier came home.
Okay.
And he just kind of never left. So, we didn't do anything like through the court or anything like that, but he just came home. So I had him full time and Emma.
And so then how did it lead up to them getting taken from the home?
So when I was, hanging out with the girl and microdosing, I had stopped. I moved in with Journey's dad, and he was 4 years in recovery. I didn't want him.
But Journey wasn't born yet, right?
No, Journey wasn't born yet.
Right.
No. And because Emma was only 1.5 at this point.
Okay.
When I moved in with him, I didn't want him to relapse, know. So, I did have somebody else that I got Adderall from, so I just went through them instead. And then Journey's dad had to go to jail for a month, I think it was. And the place where he lived was actually my cousin's. My cousin owned it. And my cousin wanted to move back in, so he kicked us out while Journey's dad was in jail, and that just stressed me to the max. And I was like, I need help, because I gotta move all of our shit. And for 2, I need help because I do not have the energy to do this.
Right.
So then I would use, and
because it was under separate circumstances that they were taken out of the home, right?
Yeah. So then after that, I stopped using again once he got out, but I was still using, taking Adderall. And then we got a place together, and the first month that we were there, we got into an argument because I was crabby because I couldn't find any Adderall or anything.
Right.
Or I didn't have the money to get it, I think it was. And so we got in an argument, and I told him the truth, that I had been doing Adderall and that I didn't have the money to get any, so I was crabby as hell. He offered me the money to, if you can get them, I'll pay for them, whatever.
Right.
Well, then I used that to my advantage, and I knew I was gonna, I started dabbling again a little bit, and I knew I was going to, so I didn't want him to relapse. So I broke up with him, and kicked him out of the house. And then he thought that the best way to get back at me is to go do meth. So he's hanging out with the same people that I'm hanging out with, and then he's doing the same thing I'm doing. So I'll want to be with him again.
Right.
And that's when active addiction hit hard. Right after I kicked him out, I mean, I was madly in love with Journey's dad. For crazy, stupid. And when we first broke up, he begged for me to let him stay and to work it out, but I still just didn't want him to relapse. So then he started seeing someone, and I was like, nope. Now I gotta numb my feelings.
Yep.
So
that's messed up.
That's when I went hard, and I broke up with him. It was in August, and by October, I was losing my house. My mom and I were moving in together. Him and I were back together. And we moved out of our apartment on October 31st, Halloween, into our house with my mom. Social services was there November 2nd. And then November 9th, they were taken. And then November 12th, he was locked up again. So for a couple weeks after he was locked up and the kids were taken, I just went nuts. I blamed everyone but myself. My family, especially. I made some I threatened to kidnap my children from my aunt and uncle and blow their house up with them in it.
Right. I remember you said that you were very upset.
Yeah, and that's not something that I can have a mouth and say some shit, but that's not who I am.
Right.
I'm not. They're my family. At the end of the day, they're my family, and they were doing what was right, and they were helping me, even though I didn't understand that yet.
Right. Right.
I do now. One thing that I have said ever since I finally learned to use my voice is that I'm honestly glad that it happened like this, because of what I learned. I don't think I would have quit using had my kids not been taken. I would have been putting them in the situation that other parents were putting their kids in,
right,
that I didn't like, and I honestly feel like my addiction stemmed from my judgment. I used to be so judgmental against people who use drugs and got their children taken away. I used to think they were so horrible,
right,
and then God's like, sit down and shut up, bitch. Here you go.
right.
And then, and I don't judge addicts like that anymore, and I mean, I still struggle, but I always said that heroin addicts were awful and whatever. When I found out Journey's dad was selling it, I snapped out on him one night when I was drunk and started screaming at the top of my lungs that he was a heroin dealer and a piece of shit loser in the middle of my parking lot. And then I ended up doing it with him. So I honestly feel like things like that happen for a reason. Like, God is like,
well, you've had some
up, girl.
Strong influence from the people you dated too,
Yes.
though, in some of these situations.
Yes. Like Emma's dad wasn't from Wisconsin. He was from a big city, very big city, where there are a lot of drugs. He was a heroin addict before he moved out here. They moved out here to get away from that. And then he turned to drinking.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, he's the one that I did whippets with and dust off with. He's the one that I used meth with for the first time.
So when you got with Journey's dad, you had already been experiencing a lot of this stuff, recently.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just snowballed into another.
Yep. And then when I did start dating Journey's dad, and he was selling weed, he was selling weed to Emma's dad. So, yeah,
the
that
circles
was
we
interesting.
weave.
Yeah. Then Emma's dad actually went up to him one night at the bar and shook his hand and told him thank you for raising my daughter. And Journey's dad said, she's not your daughter, she's my daughter.
Right.
And it's just weird.
Right.
The connections that are made.
Oh, for sure.
Are such a small world.
Mm-hmm.
Such a small world.
So after that, what were the first steps that you took to try to get the kids back then?
Well, it took a couple weeks for me to snap out of my meth bender. Honestly, going to court, walking into the courthouse, and I remember looking at the social worker who took my kids, and she said, "You're going to be clean?" And I said, "Should be." Went in and pissed, knowing I wasn't going to be clean. I just got high before I got here, Just that feeling of, like, guilt and just ashamed. And, then it was my parents and my aunt and uncle and my kids' daycare lady and her husband, because they were involved with Xavier since he was a baby, and they were friends with my
there?
parents. Yeah, they were friends with my parents growing up, so they were involved in my life a lot as a child, and then they were involved with Emma and Xavier a lot. So they wanted to show up for Emma and Xavier and be
Right.
there, and if they needed, respite care or whatever it may have been.
Right.
So just all those people that I'm supposed to be making proud, I'm doing the exact opposite, and the worst part is I'm sitting there looking at my mom, who's been asking me for a couple months if I'm using, and I'm telling her
Right.
no.
Right. And
And
there, she's fully expecting you to pass.
yep. And I mean, and I had made it a threat to my mom because she had taken my kids, to the meeting that I told her not to take them to, and told her I'd slaughter her like a pig.
And then you come in there not prepared.
Yep, and I got to look at all of them and just feel like absolute garbage, My mom had to go to the house to get things for the kids, and I was just there smoking meth before the hearing, so
Right.
that stuff was all sitting out, so
Oh,
I had to hurry
no.
up and
Right.
fly through town the opposite way that they were going so that I could get to the house fast enough to get that cleaned up before my kids came to get their stuff.
All that anxiety and stress.
Yeah, and you can feel it right now too, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can.
It was just, and then I had to, then I'm outside bawling, trying to tell my mom that she doesn't have to be afraid. Oh.
Right. There it is.
Thanks. Having my mom be afraid of me was like, she's my mom. She's not supposed to be afraid of me. I'm supposed to be afraid of her.
I totally understand, because there was a time when I was 16 and 17 that I would say my mom and stepdad were afraid of me too, because I was very aggressive and I said a lot of crazy things and I acted out in crazy ways.
Yeah.
So I totally understand
Journey's grandma has made comments about that, about why she had kept secrets from me,
that.
is being afraid. But when people, just goes to show that when people are on drugs, they don't care who they hurt.
For sure.
And that was like, I think that was like the first moment that I realized like what I was doing.
Right.
And that I was hurting, more than just my kids
Mm-hmm.
and myself. My kids was bad enough, I struggled because I used to hate people like that.
Right.
So,
And that makes it so much harder when you find yourself in that situation. I have battled with myself so much over this. Like, I can't believe I've let myself make the choices I've made. It's scary and it hurts inside, but you find ways to move forward, and you know that tomorrow you're a better person than you left in the past.
yep. And that's why it's really frustrating when I hear like people say addiction is a choice and not addiction is not the choice. Using is the choice. Addiction is a disease and we all have it in
Right.
some sort of way. Whether it be coffee, cigarettes,
Mm-hmm.
heroin, we all have it. So
The phone.
the phone.
He's
Yeah.
addicted to the phone stuff is crazy.
Yep. And so everybody's born with addiction. Not everybody is unlucky. Like, if you think that addiction is a choice and you think that it's, easy to just not be addicted to drugs, then where was I going with this?
You're basically saying that once you start using and get that addiction going, you can't just stop. Your body, your brain, you become wired as an addict. Your whole chemical makeup of your brain changes. To heal and to stop, you have to go through a lot of things to rewire your brain back to previous.
Yeah,
that
and
is
you're so
years.
used to that life, and and like Journey's dad has told me before, he struggled to keep a job because that's what he's done since he was 12 years old, was hustle. Sometimes that's literally all you know. I mean, we get ourselves in predicaments, even like I was talking about earlier. One thing can change your entire life.
For sure.
And make you look like you're the biggest piece of crap.
Yep. One bad decision can change a lot of stuff.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have support around you now, though, right?
Yes.
Like, you have strong support.
Yes, a lot of it. And, I mean, my parents are very strong supports of mine. And although I don't always see eye to eye with my aunt and uncle, they are too. We have a very good co-parenting relationship, whether we are on the same page with discipline or, whatever it may be. We still always maintain that good co-parenting relationship. And I mean, and it shows in my kids. When my kids were in the first home place that they were, when they were placed with my cousin, her and I didn't have a good relationship at all.
Right.
And you could tell when my aunt and uncle would take them for like the weekend or whatever, they would say, like, you can tell that they're struggling and suffering because of the relationship. And I mean, I struggled and suffered with my parents. I knew how my dad was, so I didn't didn't blame it all on my mom, the divorce on my mom, but then again, I did. And
right, because you protected your dad. You were, I remember we talked about that before.
And I mean, and it really messed me up when one time, well, I think it happened more than one time, but one time my mom and stepdad made a comment about my dad, and I just went off.
Right.
And, when you are co-parenting, whether you like them or not, if they are taking care of the kid the right way and loving the child and doing everything right, it's so necessary to be on the same level, because my kids are doing so great. My son is on a honor roll. He's in 8th grade.
He's a smart kid for sure.
He tries. He's in all sorts of sports. Emma is incredibly smart. She is also in all sorts of different things. And, you can see that they're happy.
Right. That's good. That's awesome.
Tell that they, that they feel that they are loved all around, and that their loved ones are loved equally too. Like, it's not like, they feel like mom is hated, by the family, or mom's the bad guy. There were times when Xavier had overheard things that my cousin or her husband would say, and then that would hurt him.
I've wondered about some of that stuff with him, like what he may have heard, over the years and stuff. Because he is smart and he does pick up on things.
Yeah, and he is big time mama's boy. Big time mama's boy. Even the social worker had told me, like, you have a mama's boy there, because he will not even open his mouth if he thinks that you're going to get in trouble.
Well, that's because I think that one time he said something. He didn't mean to, though. He thought it was okay, and then you got in trouble. So now he's like, no, I'm not talking.
Yeah, that was when, like, right before they had gotten taken, because it was when they went to him at school and talked to him, and he's like, but I only told him that you smoke ciggies and pot or weed. I can't remember how he said it, but yeah, I've never thought of that. He's still like that.
One thing that I was gonna ask you about was if you were setting any, like, different boundaries like that now, so that Emma and Journey don't say something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't smoke like in front of them or anything like that.
Well, right, because you're not using hard drugs anymore.
Right.
That's
I
your
only
past.
smoke
You're smoking
marijuana right now.
and cigarettes, like
Cigarettes,
right.
yes. So if I happen to smoke a joint outside, I do it away from people, for one, and it's it looks like a cigarette.
Right.
If they, I mean, there's been times when they've seen me with a cigarette and known that it doesn't smell like a cigarette,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell them that it's natural tobacco.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so much better than saying it's marijuana.
Yeah, yep. And I mean, and we're native too, so it kind of seems a little more fitting, I guess.
Right.
So, and then
For sure.
then my kids aren't going out saying my mom smokes pot, or like my mom smokes natural tobacco.
Right, and they actually do have stuff like that you can buy.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could call it organic tobacco. There's
Right.
so many things you could say just to create that little bit of boundary there, just so they're old enough to understand.
Yep. I did that with Emma and with Xavier. However, when I was using meth, I was sloppy.
Right.
I got really sloppy about everything. I mean, I think I told you in one of the last episodes I was in that Emma had gotten into my bag when I was sleeping. Maybe I didn't, but when I was using meth, Emma had gotten into my purse when I was out. I had been up a few days. I fell asleep. I woke up to my purse dumped upside down, everything poured out of it, and I would keep my stuff in a zippered pocket in my purse. Well,
right.
I was out that hard that she had gotten in the zipper pocket, got the thing untwisted, and it was empty, and it wasn't when I went to sleep. And I know she didn't eat it because it's disgusting, and she wouldn't. It's not like she would have wanted to put that in her mouth.
She would have been acting different too.
Right.
So
just the fact
dumped
that
it all over.
Right. I got and I was sloppy.
That's scary.
Yes.
That's scary.
Very
stuff.
scary. And I mean, sometimes I try to tell myself not to think about that kind of stuff, but then at the same time, it's what keeps me doing well now.
Right, and that's why you don't want to block out your past.
Exactly.
Those experiences are what remind you, hey, we're not doing this anymore.
Exactly.
It's dangerous. It's risky. Our lives are more important than this.
And our children are more important.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, our lives, the lives around us, of our families, it's more important than this,
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you ever... did you have any, like, negative feelings that led to your substance use, or did you just start using kind of with some friends and or did it stem from anything?
I mean, it had a lot to do with my parents' divorce, losing my grandma. That was a big one. Losing my grandma was real big. And just like being bullied my whole life, and like I didn't realize my worth until a couple years ago, maybe, and even then I didn't really. I was still in a shitty ass situation up until a year ago.
But I think the people around you see it more and more, that you do realize it more all the time.
Yeah. But basically, like, being bullied and, not feeling like I didn't ever think I would be with in a good relationship and have a man that treats me the right way,
Right.
Never. And that was pretty much it. That I'm never, I'm not worthy of having somebody treat me like that, because all I am is a fucking piece of shit, trailer trash junkie. That's just what you think.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that's what you think about,
Right.
and then that's the road you go down,
Yeah.
I was trying to...
You lower your standards.
Yep. I was trying to, basically self-medicate and, try to keep myself as happy as I could be with the lifestyle that I was living, even though it wasn't the lifestyle I wanted to be living. Like, even when I started trying to date again after Journey's dad and I started talking to someone who owns a logging business, and, his family is well known. He's well known. He makes very good money. He is not an addict. He
Right.
he doesn't have drug addiction issues or alcohol issues or anything like that, and I don't know, I felt so out of place, just so, I didn't feel like I was worth.
Do you feel like you don't have so enough to talk about too because of your past and stuff? Maybe you
Yeah.
can't even talk about a lot of things and feel comfortable.
Right, feeling comfortable because, I'm going to be judged. That's, most people that don't know what drug addiction or substance abuse issues feels like
Or looks
judge
like.
it. Right. Judge it and judge it hard. And that's one thing with me owning a business. With my clients, my full-time clients, after, we have a steady relationship, I am open with them and tell them that I am in recovery. But that's not the thing. That's not something I bring up on the first day.
Of course.
I did have my cousin's ex-wife working for me, and we went to a job, and it was the first time we'd ever walked in this house. And she got talking with the lady and told her that she was a recovering meth addict and that I was a recovering meth and heroin addict. And thankfully, I still clean for that lady. But
right. Just outed it right away. Huh?
Yeah. And I was like, I told her, I'm like, yeah, I can't have you working for me anymore because I can't have you just telling my clients that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to maintain a relationship with them before I just go blurting out that, people don't trust addicts.
Your professional relationship doesn't have to be about the fact that you used in your past. Like,
Right.
you can start a business and move forward and have professional relationships with people without having to discuss this thing over here that you've left in the past, but you're not forgetting what happened, but you're leaving it there.
Yeah. And moving on with your life.
Right.
Right.
Because you don't need your clients not trusting you. And that's
Right.
what starts to happen if you talk too soon. Build the trust, let them see that you're legit, and then, talk about it later like you do. That's a great idea.
Yep. And, I mean, the first client that I ever had was a post-construction clean. We cleaned one time, and then she ended up calling back and setting up reoccurring cleans. And I cleaned for her it was only a couple of times after the first clean, and she was home. They had moved in and were actually having me clean, so she homeschooled her kids, so she was home. And then we would get chatting about things, and her mom came by one day, and her mom runs a women's group at one of the churches around here, and her and I got talking, and I told them that I was in recovery. At that point, I was only a year sober.
Right.
If that. So the mom invited me to the women's group. I started attending that every week.
That's awesome.
And then they have friends that were pastors in Texas, and they moved up here, and they're now the pastors at one of the churches here in town. And there's been certain dates and things that they've done, different sermons, and like a healing sermon. And she messaged me and said, hey, you should bring your Emma because she has seizures, and to have her healed. You become kind of like these people's family a little bit. You're their maid.
Yeah, I
you
suppose
do
you get to
end
know
up
people.
Yeah, and I mean, your cleaning lady knows everything about you.
Yeah. You probably know a lot about them too.
Yeah.
After doing it a few times.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah.
So with this, kind of with that being said, do you, at this point, you seem like you're pretty strong about the idea of not relapsing. You have support around you. Do you have any fears that you might relapse in the future? Or do you feel like I'm saying though, do you feel like you have a good hold on it, or that it could slip at any time?
I do feel like I have a good hold on it. And there was a point in time when I knew that I wasn't going to stay sober,
Right, because there's always that. Anybody who's been an addict, there's always that chance.
Yes.
But once you get a good grip on it and get that control, you cannot let it happen even on your worst days.
Right. I've actually had meth go through my hands. Heroin or fentanyl, I'm not sure I could be as strong. So that's why I avoid it at all costs. I still have a couple of friends who are still in active addiction, and when I talk to them or if I see them, I'm they know not to bring it up or anything.
And they don't?
And they don't.
That's
no.
good. That's
and,
good.
I mean, the only reason why I'm still friends with him is because they are good people. They're just in a bad position,
And you know
so,
that they'll probably get help someday.
yes.
Do you try to encourage it?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. But certain situations, I mean, one of my buddies,
Right.
he lives with his parents, but they both use. And
Oh, wow.
so he can't get sober.
So he needs to move out of home to get sober.
But he can't get a job anywhere. Like, nobody will hire him because of his charges. And yeah, it's just like, what do they expect you to do then?
And that's when you think that your situation's tough. Somebody else's situation is a little tougher out there. You know?
Yep.
Can't be taking life for granted, because it is, some people really do have a really tough spot to get out of.
Yeah. And you really don't think that you will get out.
Like you said yesterday to me when we were talking about what we were, you couldn't imagine what I go through sometimes. Like, I couldn't imagine that. Like, with growing up the way I did and stuff, like using and then having both parents use and live and having just no outs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nowhere to go, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep. And like he has a child with a girl he's been with for years. She got the kids taken away, or their daughter taken away, and he's taking a step back because he knows that he can't be around her, and he wants so badly to be able to be a dad and be in his daughter's life, but he just can't get out of that situation. It's so hard.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing right now to rebuild that trust with your kids? I know that two of them are pretty young still, and they probably don't fully understand some of the things that happen, but with Xavier, you know.
Yep. Well, Xavier and Emma both, because Emma doesn't understand what happened, but obviously she understands that mom was sick, and you know, and our family dynamic isn't the same as other kids. You know, they have a mom and dad, we have a mom and auntie.
Right.
So, she understands that part of it, but I just try to give them one-on-one time, really. And like with Xavier, I'm open with him about a lot of things. You know, not everything, obviously, but you know, I'm open with the fact that I did use drugs and I did mess up, and I was a bad mom, and I know that I hurt you, and I know that there's things that you probably are going to resent me for the rest of your life. I'm trying now, and you know, I'm really trying, and it took me a long time. I mean, Xavier made comments like, "Great parenting, mom." That was one of his favorite comments that he would say. That stopped about a year ago, and
that's good though.
Hasn't come back at all, and we have a great relationship now. Like,
I remember you telling me that many years ago, actually, that he said that.
Yep. Yep, and it was horrible, and he said it he would make comments like that for a while.
Right. So that's where it's like, how important is forgiveness?
Yes.
Play the role in moving forward.
Well, but the thing is that all depends on your recovery too, because you know, if I were to relapse and get them taken for good, they would resent me for the rest of their lives.
Right. I was gonna say, does Xavier, like, he stopped, so for the last year he hasn't made any comments or anything about the previous choices?
No. He's made comments like jokingly about my mom, like mom leaving. Like, he said he always makes jokes if I tell him I'm going to pick up milk.
Right.
He'll be like, "No, not you too."
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. But he doesn't make those like great parenting mom that anymore. He's
good.
You know, he's turned it around to make like more like he's picking on me about it than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I said, we have a great relationship. I mean, when he's at my house, 90% of the time, if I'm not doing something with the girls, I'm doing something with him. He will hang out with me, like, actually wants to hang out with me, which is weird because I didn't know teenagers actually liked hanging out with their parents.
Yeah, but you're a cool mom. You know
I try to be.
You know.
I try to be the cool mom, but I try to also
discipline.
stay. Yeah, and that's been a hard thing. That's one thing with parenting with addiction. And I actually just talked to David's ex-wife 2 days ago about this because the social workers are telling her to discipline the children. She said, I'm not going to discipline them in the 2 hours that I get to see them a week.
Right.
Like with my kids, I got to see them 4 hours a week. I had to drive all the way to New Auburn, so I drove over an hour there and back.
How are you going to be
kids.
Disciplining them in that little bit of time? Like,
yeah, and
the person they're with needs to be doing it, you know.
Yeah, and I'd spoil them, you know. Especially like when Journey's dad was locked up and I was selling for him. I had continuous money flowing through, so every time I went to a visit, they had something, you know.
Right.
So then the hard part about that is when you get back to parenting, how do you break that? Because now your kids think they can walk all over you and that they're going to get whatever they want because...
So maybe that's where during that little bit of time you have to do just a little bit of like, hey, I can't let you just do anything, but I don't want to be here just disciplining you either. I want to spend quality time with you. You know, I want you to be mad at me because I had to discipline you about something.
Right.
You know,
and it's hard to explain that to a kid too, you know, especially like Emma was Journey's 3 and Emma's 7.
That
so Journey was Emma
really
was
interesting dynamic.
Like 3.5 when 3.5 when she found out that I was having Journey.
Right.
And you know, it's so hard to explain to a 3-year-old that I'm still your mom and I'm still the boss, but I want to spoil you with love and attention and everything else, and them not get spoiled because it just happens. I'm pretty sure probably everyone who has gone through my situation would probably say the same. Like that's just like the reason I want to start a treatment center for parents is because what's the first thing you want to do? You don't have any kids. What do you think? The first thing you want to do when they take your kids away, what do you want to do?
Probably use.
Yeah, because you're so hurt. That's the worst feeling in the world.
Well,
having
I'm just
them take your
thinking
kids away.
I'm covering up emotional pain. That's what you would jump to cover the pain is addicts will go to using, you know.
Yep.
That's why I went down the road I did is because I couldn't handle my emotional pain.
Yep. Yeah. Mental health. They say money is the root of all evil, but mental health is the root of all evil.
Yes, mental health is a struggle for a lot of people.
That's why, like, my aunt had suggested getting Emma back in counseling. I was like, yep, now, let's do it. And I'm going to get Journey in it as well because she's got some aggression. And I want them to be able to learn how to be able to be normal mentally, you know, and not struggle like I did or their dads did. Or, you know.
Does having your boyfriend he lives with you now, does that create any new challenges with parenting, like parenting in recovery, or does it actually make things easier?
It makes things easier for me.
Even sharing the time with him and the kids, like they understand and there's like a...
Yeah. With having Emma and Xavier half the time, you know, I'm not spending all my time with him when they're there.
Right.
You know, I'm spending all my time with them. And usually he's there, you know, unless he's at work, he's there spending time with us too. But I still also do one-on-one stuff, you know. He works very early, so he goes to bed early. So when him and the girls go to bed, then I have time with Xavier, you know. Then I make time to have with Emma Journey's naps, or, you know, I let Journey go over to the neighbor's house and play with the friends over there for a while so that I can have time with Emma. You know, just having that alone time, that bonding experience, that they feel like they're important, you know.
Right, yeah, for sure.
You're focusing all your attention on them, right? So and for a while I struggled because Emma didn't have that. Emma wasn't getting any alone time with me, and she was really acting out.
Was there a specific reason why, or it's just that's kind of how things were going?
Well, she was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and our family doctor did not want to put her on medication due to my addiction. However, I might not have had my addiction had I had medication when I was a child. So I want her to be able to have an opportunity that I didn't. So and we put her on, you know, she's only on 5 milligrams.
Right, a day. or
Well,
when she needs it, or how does
10
that?
milligrams a day. So she gets one in the morning and then one at noon.
Okay.
And it's literally night and day.
Really?
Complete 180 turnaround. Like, she used to be wild, loud, bouncing off the walls, mean, incredibly mean and bossy, which she does get that from me. Now she's, got a report from the Y yesterday, and every day's notes is, Emma is helpful to her peers. Emma is, cleaning up even when the other kids aren't, and, stepping in to help somebody if they need help, even if that means
That's
that they got to
awesome.
cut she's got to get out of line and go back to the end. It's so
awesome.
nice to see that. And
For sure.
I wish that my doctor would have allowed her to be on it sooner, but I'm glad that she's at the point now where she is. And, it's crazy, the turnaround, and our relationships, our whole family dynamic changed, really. Xavier has always told me, "You're the reason I'm never having kids, Mom, because you had that one."
Oh, no.
Picking on Emma. And he always would say, "Can't we just sell her to the Amish?" But that doesn't... He doesn't
They
say
might
those
not
things,
want her
really.
either if she's that wild.
Right? No kidding. But yeah, we don't... I mean, he doesn't... obviously, he's always going to pick on his sisters.
Of course.
He actually... She'll go up to him when she gets home from school or from the Y or whatever, and she'll run to him and give him a big hug, and, he'll tell her that he loves her, and...
So you're creating a good nurturing environment at home where the
Yes.
kids they love each other, they're friendly to each other, they're happy to see each other and be in the same home. And
Journey, no, she's a different story.
but she's younger still.
And she thinks that she's the only child.
She'll come around in a couple years.
Yeah, because she sees Mom all the time, and they're only with me half the time.
Right.
So she thinks that I'm hers and nobody else's.
Does that ever create any issues when
Yes.
they're all three there and you
A
have to
lot.
give a different other kid attention?
Yes. There's a lot of redirection with Journey when I have the other two. Because even with my boyfriend living with me, if I am even just having a conversation with him, she wants to be right there.
Right.
And she's trying to climb up on my lap.
Mm-hmm.
And him and I actually just talked about this the other day. He was like, I'm going to take her and do something with her so she knows that I'm not just here for you. I'm here for her too.
Right.
So.
Oh, that's a good idea though. That's
Yeah.
smart. So you're allowing him to be like in a step parent role,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like pretty quickly.
Yeah. We were best friends for a couple years before we started dating. And he was already a big part of the kid's life, Journey's life especially, because he was over every day.
Right.
So, and he was even at my family's Christmas last year.
Nice.
And we weren't even together at that point. So,
Right.
he already had a relationship with them.
So your whole family is good with him, like
Except for my aunt and uncle, but yes.
Yeah.
And he also has his own kids. So it's hard for him right now because he's seeing my kids and the neighborhood kids more than his own kid. Well, he's not seeing them yet. So it's hard for him. But at the same time, he's learning these new experiences and everything so that when we do get his kids,
Right.
then he has all of the learning experiences, and obviously we never stop learning. We're always gonna
Of course.
There's always something we can learn. I think it's gonna be a little different when it's 5 of us, or 5 of them, I should say, 7 of us total. But
Yep.
That's
a big
slowly but
house.
surely, yeah.
And then you have to find the balance for all the kids and mix the step kids and everybody. That gets to be a real
3-year-old,
challenge.
a 5-year-old, 2 7-year-olds, and a 13-year-old. And the 7-year-olds are both girls.
The biggest thing I feel like is don't let the kids blame each other for stuff. Like, make them realize you're all one family and you're not going to point the finger at the opposite families when you have a problem.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that's what you see a lot in step families and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
It's what my step family's been going through for the last year now, is pointing the fingers at people who they want to blame instead of taking responsibility for their own actions.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little easier for us because of the fact that I was friends with him first, and I was friends with his wife before I was even friends with him. So
Oh, that's
met his
crazy.
kids, and my kids met his kids, and Journey played with his kids a few times when I was
Mm-hmm.
friends with her, and then her and I stopped being friends, and then him and I started being friends. I mean, him and I went to middle school together, so we've kind of known each other for,
Oh, so it's been a long time.
yeah. I just moved away. I moved away in 8th grade, so then when he started coming around,
Did you go back to Levistrom when you were a little bit older, or no?
I no, well, I didn't. I went to Eau Claire until 8th grade, and then went to Olivestrom, and I was expelled from there my junior
Oh,
year,
okay.
and then I went to McKinley.
Gotcha.
Oh, um, when he got out of prison and started having his kids, then I would bring my kids over to his mom's
Mm-hmm.
because she lives right across from me, and the kids would play.
Right.
So,
So they know each other well.
yep, and Journey even calls his son's name is Jackson, and one of my friend's son's name is Jackson. So she calls him Shannon's Jackson, and David's son her Jackson. So
That's cool.
I mean, they all know each other. They all
Right.
play together. All have played together. They all get along.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the foster mom is trying to tell them that they don't know who we are and stuff because they want to
course.
adopt the kids, and so they're doing like whatever they can to try to get the social workers to.
Someone's always gotta ruin it or try to just be shitty about something.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. So with Xavier, are you? Because I mean Emma, or even Emma though. I know Journey's young, but like with Xavier and Emma, are you doing anything to teach them about addiction and the consequences? Because I mean I know that is Journey the only one that's allowed to go see John? That's it. Okay, so then Xavier and Emma wouldn't be part of that dynamic.
Right.
So with those two then, with Emma and Xavier, what are you doing to make them see the consequences, because they've seen it with you somewhat.
Right. Well, see, and it's difficult right now because Emma is still so young that she doesn't understand what it was. She just knew that mom was sick.
Right.
And I mean, same with Journey. That's what, Journey knows her daddy's in a timeout because he was naughty and he was sick. Especially with Xavier, like, that's why I'm open with him with experiences, because I want him to, I was a teenager once, and you don't want
Right.
to listen to your parents, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
My parents never gave me life experiences that they had gone through and, told me what they did and what they should have done, or, so I try to be like that with Xavier. Like, okay, look at Xavier. I made one choice to stop taking Adderall, not go to the doctor and try to get it done, try to
Yup.
get myself diagnosed or anything. I'm just going to self-medicate, and then, well, I'll just use meth for a little while. It'll be fine. And then it just, no. And you tell yourself in your head, as an addict all the time, like, I have to quit. I can't do
Yeah.
this. Like, there were multiple times where I had even told my dealers, like, do not give it to me. And then 20 minutes later, they're giving it to me. Like,
Do you have a lot of physical withdrawal from meth, or is it more mental?
it's a lot of mental.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But also being diagnosed now and being medicated, that helps keep my mind off of that, because my medication does help me stay more level-headed, and, like, I'm not all over the place. I
Right.
am doing a lot better at keeping organized, like keeping up on laundry. Stupid
That's
little things
actually
like that.
what I was going to ask you next. With all this balancing all them, are you prioritizing self-care?
Well, I've never really prioritized self-care
But
my
you
whole
need
life.
to in
Yes.
order to stay on a good path,
Yep.
especially giving all this energy to the kids and your boyfriend, and that you got to take care of yourself too.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really bad at self-care.
Yeah.
So I try, like, you know,
So currently you're really not doing much as for your
I'll try
self-care?
to, like I'll put on a cute outfit and do my hair my hair and makeup or whatever once in a while. But now that I have David at home,
Mm-hmm.
I can actually take showers by myself. So that's great.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I haven't been able to take a shower by myself in a long time.
And even that is just, you maybe can go take a bath and relax
Mm-hmm.
and just get a little bit of, peace that you weren't able to get before.
Yep. And
All
that's one
that
thing
matters.
I did try to do a lot when my kids weren't home was self-care, taking baths, and because I'm not always going to have that opportunity. I'm getting my kids back. Like
Right,
I'm not going to
right.
stop trying to get them back. So, I got to take the opportunity while I can. I used to take naps all the time.
Right.
Every Monday after I'd have the kids, that would be my nap day. I would catch up, and then I'd get up from my naps and I'd be fully energized. I'd clean the house from having them over the weekend, and I don't do that anymore, obviously.
Mhm.
But I also don't have to anymore. I
Right.
don't get tired from having them for I have them right now in the summertime. I have them for 5 days, and by Sunday, I want them to stay. I'm not tired.
sure.
I'm not,
Yeah.
So also getting myself on that good level of being clean and organized and keeping up with things
It makes a
is
difference.
extremely helpful too. Yeah.
Because when you let things get behind, it just like a daunting task.
Yep. And then depression takes over, and then guilt, and then everything else.
Right. The whole
and
cycle starts again. And before
Yep.
you know it, you might be on the path you don't want to be on.
So when I was in family treatment court, they had me make a box. They just gave me a cardboard box, but I've made one for David now. So with just like a plastic tote, and I've taken photos, photos of me and my kids previous to all of it, my kids during all of it, my kids now, court papers, good and bad, anything that shows anything good and bad about, that life, because then when you're having a hard time, you grab your toolbox and you open it up
Right.
and you look at all that stuff, and it makes you realize, like, this is what is going to happen. This is, when Journey's dad started coming around last summer, he had gotten out of jail and was staying with me for a couple weeks, and he would look at it as like that, money. Like,
Right.
how am I going to get money now? I'm not going to be able to get money. What the fuck am I going to do for money? Not think about any of the repercussions, just think about that, You really have to force yourself to think about all that negative shit. And I mean, there's still things that people tell me that happened that I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about that.
Right. Me
And
too,
I
for
will
sure.
jot it down even or whatever, because it's like, holy shit, I forgot that happened.
Right.
Like, and oh my God, I like that. What? How did we not get caught? Or like, whatever,
Yeah, I
you
know. I totally get that.
So, yeah. And honestly, being your own advocate, being able to use your voice and tell people what you need is huge.
Right.
Is so huge. It took me until I did that to actually
Yeah.
stay sober.
Because now you can see all the things.
Yep.
You're not forgetting.
Yep. And your support group.
Right.
I have so many people in my support group
That's good.
that I can turn to, if I were to call any of my friends right now and say, I want to get high, every single one of them is going to be doing something of some sort to distract me, or, even if they're at work or sleeping or doing whatever it is, because
Right.
that's, good people, good friends do for each other is help each other.
For sure.
The girl who helps me when I go to work, she watches my kids. She also lets me borrow her car when I need it, because we currently only have one. But I watch her kids in return. I make them all dinner or lunch
Right.
or whatever. We do
You work
things like
together
that.
with people.
Yeah, and that's how it's supposed to be. That's how friendships are supposed to be. And everybody, when David and I were still friends, I picked him up from work when he, had dehydration.
Right.
When he was withdrawing at work, I went there and brought him lunch and something to drink and some painkillers, like ibuprofen and Tylenol, so he didn't, and everybody was always like, you're leading him on, you're doing all this. I'm like, but that's just who I am. Like, that's just...
If you're doing it out of friendship, that's totally fine.
You're right.
If somebody else puts something else on it, that's them.
Right. If my friend calls me and says, look, I'm sick as fuck at work, like, can you please bring me something to drink? Okay, I'm coming with a fucking meal and a drink and some medicine to help you feel better, and, whatever I can to help you.
Right.
If I can.
Right.
One of my other buddies was just blasted on Facebook for some bullshit. Like, everybody has turned on him. Guess whose ass was there right away?
Yeah.
Me. Guess who called the cops when I seen the shit on Facebook? Me. Like, that's what good friends are for. And people are like dogging him because of what happened. They don't even know the full story.
Right.
But yet they also don't know that this man has helped me so much with my kids and my finances and stuff like that since their dads are not around. He's helped me with a lot of things, and nobody sees that. Nobody knows that.
People just want to see one side. They want to see their negative side. They don't want to say this person could be positive.
Right. Exactly.
So with that being said, do you have any other advice for like struggling parents who are starting to be parents after addiction again? Like outside of like the toolbox,
Yeah, reach out. You can come to me even if you need to. Put my name on the video so they can find me.
I'll put your social media on there for sure. Yeah.
Get a hold of me. Reaching out and talking to somebody, especially somebody who has been through it, is just so amazing, because that support, knowing somebody else has gone through it, is just so helpful.
Right. So is there anything else you want to add today?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. Well, the big thing is just remember, parenting is a challenge. Parenting during addiction and after addiction is a bigger challenge. It can seem very daunting, but even if you felt like the worst parent in the world, you're not. You can still be a great parent. You can still do good things. You just have to reach out. Don't let it hinder you. Ask for help and use the resources around you, and you can still be the best parent ever.
Yep.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being here. We have like some eye-opening conversations. Today was a really good conversation. Yes. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no problem.
And thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Stay humble, stay happy, stay safe, stay healthy, and make good choices for yourself and those around you.